Thank you so much, Scott, for being here. And I've known you for just over a year now, and I had the absolute pleasure to get to know your work about a year ago. First of all, I'd love to hear about how life was a struggle for you, because I think that's where a lot of people are. And I know for me, I knew things were wrong, and I had been experiencing depression for 20 years, and I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the techniques like the Kiloby inquiry. So what was your wasteland like? How bad was life before things changed for you?
Um, if I start back when I was a child, life wasn't bad from 0 to like 9 years old, or till sixth grade. Life wasn't bad, actually. The way I remember it, I felt innocent. I felt free. I felt like a little kid who could just go play and enjoy life. And I would, you know, I would take on the neighborhood kids in races and haunted houses and plays and the things that kids do. And then at age in sixth grade, I was bullied pretty ferociously, and that changed my life. It was very traumatic for me the way it happened: physical abuse, ridicule, oscillation from a close group of friends in sixth grade. So it's like the universe sort of split for me at that point, and I didn't know what was happening. But I soon went into isolation and loneliness and hiding. I became a musician, started to write songs in my basement, wanted to be a rock star, and didn't know why I wanted to be a rock star, but now I know because I wanted love, because I felt that deep yearning inside from being rejected by people close to me, to be loved. And that was my outlet. It wasn't just to express the music, but it was to get love, to get people to love me by the songs that I write. And that spiritual search, so to speak, um, could only go on so long, because in that there was a lot of trauma and existential issues and not content with life, not at all content with life, not just sort of being thrown into the rat race of life without any real tools, without any way to navigate that. And it led to a 20-year drug addiction, which culminated in taking a lot of painkillers, sometimes 8 and 10 at a time, high-level painkillers, swallowing them until I would become jaundiced and yellow, like, my liver. I would do this in binges, like 3 and 4 day binges of just swallowing opiates. That's when it got really bad. And then would drink myself to death at night. I mean, to sleep at night, not to death, but no one would be that dramatic. But let's seriously drink yourself until you're passed out every night. I came to a point at which I recognized that whatever answers I'm looking for in life, they're not going to be found in the way that I had been looking. I was an attorney at that time, so I couldn't find the answers from the mind, even though they trained me as an attorney. I couldn't find the answers to those deeper questions, around suffering and seeking and depression and anxiety and all that. Yeah, the mind couldn't figure it out, and the drugs weren't enough. The drugs and alcohol, they gave me temporary relief, but they didn't solve the issue. And thank God for the drugs and alcohol. I really think, the way I look at it now, it's like, thank you, drugs and alcohol, for taking care of me when I couldn't take care of myself, right before I'd come to inquiry and awareness. So at a certain point, I hit rock bottom, like many people do. And I was laying on my couch in my apartment. As an attorney, I was living above my attorney's office, just, rocking back and forth like a baby in an infant position, just crying for help. And, my brother and my partner came to help me. I got on a journey of sobriety and recovery and spirituality. But what happened is that the particular program I got into, which was a 12-step program, it helped me, but it really just sort of beget more questions, because they talked about spiritual awakening as a way to be free of that, but I didn't quite grok or realize what it is that they were pointing to. So I had to look outside of those programs, and I looked into therapies, and I looked into counseling, I looked into positive thinking strategies, The Secret, all the world's religions. I would study them. And I came across just very simple, non-dual teachings that really resonated with me. You know, really plain English, non-dual teachings resonated. And I started to pick up those practices. And as soon as I did, which is what led really to the development of the inquiries, as soon as I did, things began to change for me from an interior perspective. Of course, you know, the inside and the outside, as we know, as we do this work, is kind of all one, right? But going in with inquiry and with resting as awareness and watching thoughts instead of thinking, and feeling feelings instead of avoiding them, became really a very powerful practice for me. And so I started to bring that into my life, and more every day. And I had awakening experiences, you know, profound experiences, which I could go into, but I don't have to. But I just say that they shifted everything about my existence and about the Scott character and where he was going, and the deficiency stories that were running his life, and the traumas, you know, all of that in those experiences got blown open, and none of it mattered anymore. And there was this sense of, this is it here, this moment, this presence here is it. And that's all that there is, this. And that was a huge awakening, and then it shifted my life. But afterwards, I started to share about the message with people, like blogging and doing videos like we all do. You know, when we have experiences, we want to share those. And people started coming to me, and I started working with people one-on-one, and we eventually opened treatment centers. And what I found is that, sort of reverse engineering the path that I was on, I was looking back, like, what led to the awakening in my life, and what's working for me. And then I became wanting to help. Became interested in helping other people. And so that's where the inquiry started to become developed. And then here we are now, US certified in Kiloby inquiries facilitator. That's kind of the, I don't know if it's the short or the long version of the story that led to kind of where we're at now, with these new set of inquiries, which I know you like and I like, and very much a part of my life. And the deepening or the awakening and the freedom continues to, I don't know what the word is, deepen or expand. And like, there's no end to the depth of it. And that's why I left being an attorney, I left being a songwriter and a musician, I left it all behind, because this was such a powerful transformation in my life that it felt called to share it with others. And I'm sure you do too. So this is why we're talking today, isn't it, Bronte?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you so much, Scott, for sharing that. And I do want to hear more about the awakenings, and that was one of my questions for today. Just, we hear about some people have this profound moment, and it's just everything kind of falls away. And then for me and other people, there seems to be just a gradual or a gentle falling away. So I would love to hear more about those, you know, even one or two of those experiences that you've had, and I know my community would be interested in
Sure.
those experiences. And at the
Yeah.
same time, you spoke about inquiry and awareness and looking at thoughts, and I have heard you speak about when you started kind of developing the Kiloby inquiries, you heard Eckhart Tolle talk about looking at thoughts, and you kind of went from there. And I can see how you have taken that next step with looking at thoughts with a very practical technique like simple inquiry. But I want to, can we just take it a step back a little bit? Because I think the words like inquiry and awareness can be kind of looked over, or just kind of goes over our heads. I know that I've
Yeah.
heard the word inquiry for a long time. I've heard of, we know what
Yeah.
awareness is, but I think the level of awareness that I have now that I've been practicing the Kiloby inquiries is very different to what, and even the word mindfulness, I feel like the word mindfulness can be looked over as if, oh yeah, that's just that
Yeah.
thing that we use our five senses and we can see, feel, touch, taste, hear. And I think the mind is just so good at, like, oh yeah, I know what that is, I don't need that. Or it kind of diminishes what it is. And then you've also kind of explained and expressed how this moment is all that is. And I'm only just at the very, I feel like I'm only just at the very start of that journey of slowing down my life enough to be here, to be in this moment because
Yeah.
I've constantly raced forward. So if you can speak more on kind of expanding awareness and inquiry, what does that, how can we kind of, move into
Beautiful.
that?
Well, when I think of it, I think of beginner's mind from Buddhism, because if this moment is all there is, then we must begin here. See, we have to begin right here in this moment. And that's what I think they're talking about in Buddhism. The mind can't understand what I just said because the mind is living in past and future. But as you start to recognize awareness in your own life, you start to see that we must have beginner's mind here, because this moment is ever fresh and new. And this is all that there is, this moment, this awareness. Thoughts of the past come through this present awareness. Thoughts of the future come through here. This is all there is, this, what we're calling reality in this moment. And this is where we need to have beginner's mind. I'll recall a story. I was in a chat room shortly after my first big awakening experience, and I was just chatting with other people who'd had those experiences or who were working towards those experiences. And I remember everybody was sort of stating conclusions about it. The mind was coming back in to sort of like try to understand this awakening. And to me, I played into that a little bit until I realized, well, that's just more mind trying to understand something. And awakening is really a realization. It's experiential, you know. It's not really something that we can understand by the mind. And I saw people sort of arguing and debating point by point these issues. And I thought, that's not really what this is about. This was about, and I met someone in that chat room. His name was Tom. And he said, Scott, are you open to inquiry? And I said, I don't know what that is. And he showed me what it was, and there was a shift right there. Because instead of creating conclusions, like putting more thoughts out into the world about this is what reality is and this is what this is, he was saying, are you open to look at that? And it's like, oh, that's beginner's mind. That's, this moment is all there is. And therefore the better place to be in this moment is to be open to what is, instead of just believing everything that's coming across, to be open, to have beginner's mind and to inquire into this, because my suffering is arising here in the moment, in the thoughts and feelings and sensations. This is the place from which I inquire with that beginner's mind. And so that was a monumental shift in my life, and I moved away from being a teacher that sort of pronounces a lot of truth, instead gives practical tools to help in this beginner's mind, this awareness. That's where all the work got developed from that play of events there that unfolded. Yeah.
I love that, and thank you so much for offering practical tools, because I think my spiritual path started in understanding spiritual concepts, especially life is love, or we are love, and I am love, and it's like, cool, okay, so that means that fear is bad. And then for along my spiritual journey, it was like, don't go near the fear. And so what your techniques brought was, there's actually nothing wrong here. I can feel this depression, I can feel this pain, this is a part of life as well. So I want to thank you and honor you for keeping it so practical for me and for others. So it does become that experiential. It is experiential. It's an experience rather than these intellectual concepts of what spirituality is.
Right. Yeah. It's a lived experience. It really is a lived experience, moment by moment lived experience. When you talk about depression, when I think about that, it's like, if someone isn't really awake to that, they're going to hear that diagnosis and could even identify with that diagnosis and then solidify the sense of depression. And so that's okay at one level of consciousness, but when you become open to inquiry, you don't have to buy into that completely, that label. Instead, you can look from awareness and actually notice the thoughts and the feelings, sensations that create the sense of depression, right? And rest with that and inquire into that, rather than just, I'm depressed, and sort of take a pill for it. You can sometimes do that if you have to, but there's a new way here, right? Is to rest with our experience and let it be as it is, instead of trying to medicate it, cover it up, get rid of it, discharge it, neutralize it, or whatever. And I think that is the beauty of the work, is that allowing, that accepting of everything as it is. Sure.
And so if people are interested in this new way, how would you describe inquiry and awareness for them?
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, you have to know that there's an aspect of our experience that is awake. Even if you can't experience it directly, you almost have to trust that it's there and start to verify it for yourself. Even before you get into inquiry, you have to kind of notice that, okay, so I hear birds singing, just like in meditation, I hear birds singing, and there's an awareness of that. So whatever I am, I must be aware of that. Now, I might say, well, what I am is my thoughts, but I'm aware of those. See, you start to notice that, okay, those thoughts are coming through, but whatever I am, I'm aware of those, right? The feeling comes up and it can feel like a big deal, right? But if you sit with it, you realize I am what's awake to that. I'm not that. You let these things come through one by one. I forgot your question, but that's where I wanted to go with it. Was that's how you start? Well, that's how you start inquiries, to understand that to experience that there is this capacity, instead of an aware, a capacity to be aware here in the moment, which is different than thinking and identifying with thoughts and feelings, to being aware of them. So that's the first step, is just, can you access that recognition that there is this witnessing awareness here? And then from that awareness, then we can start asking questions, inquiry questions, which don't engage the intellect so much as that they allow something to come up from the question. So if I were sitting, just a very simple example would be, if I'm looking from that awareness, having come to a state of what we call like natural rest, which is just allowing everything to be as it is, which is really a lot like meditation, then we start inquiry. And so a very simple way to start is, let's say someone's triggered you. This is a very simple way. Someone's triggered you. It could be a mother or a father or a friend. You just pull that person up in your awareness and you look at them. It's just a thought of, or an image of that person. And you ask, okay, what story is this person bringing up in me as an identity? What deficiency story here? And you have to kind of feel into that for a second. And if you do, you'll hear your mouth say the words. It'll say like, I'm not loved. I'm not heard. I'm not safe. I'm a victim, or something like that, right? And there's a simple entry point there into inquiry, because once you've labeled yourself, for example, as a victim in that relationship, you can then, from that awareness, turn towards these thoughts and be skillful about it and say the opposite. So you can say, I'm not a victim. And when you say that, you're not engaging the intellect. You're looking from the awareness to see what comes up. So the victimhood consciousness, the thoughts and feelings will come up just by saying I'm the opposite. I'm not a victim. The way I explain that to people lately is like, where do you live? Do you live in Australia or
In
Bronte?
Australia, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that down in Australia, they have the worm food. So in other words, they're drawing worms out of the earth. I know some other people, so you can't see the worms in the earth, right? You put the food over the holes in the earth, and all of a sudden, the worms come out of the hole for you to see, right? And that's a good metaphor or whatever for this, because if I say, um, if I'm feeling I'm not good enough, for example, in relationship, I can just turn that around and say, I'm perfect as I am. So I put that out there, and that's the worm food, and it's going to conjure up not worms but thoughts and feelings. And so then as they come up, we have skillful ways, as you know, to witness those one by one or all together, to allow those to just be as they are, see them, and they become objects in awareness rather than what I am. You start to see them as, oh, this is what I'm looking at, not what I am. Even though if might not be aware that that's happening, that seeing, but that's what's happening. You see these words and pictures, and we have ways of tapping through it, as you know, or whatever. And as those come to rest, there's less identification with those thoughts there that you conjured up. And that allows you to go into the somatic experience, go into the body, feel into what's there, and really lovingly and tenderly hold it, allow it, let it to be as it is in the space. No violence, just allowing. And there's something about when you're in the body in a really state of restfulness and gentle, tender, loving attention, spacious attention with feelings and sensations, they can start to change and move naturally, not because of will or force, but because you've just brought attention to it, right? And then we have tricks about that. If there's some resistance down the body, we can help with that. As you know, Bronte, you can help with that. It's like we have little tools like metaphysical hands where we hold the thing and allow that sensation to move, and that reduces resistance. So we have lots of somatic tools that help us go into the body because we carry a lot of data or information in our bodies. We know that from trauma, from the book, The Body Keeps the Score, or other trauma books that have told us that it's not just here that we're carrying around information. It's all the way down here. It's in our body. And so this work is very much an embodiment approach where we go into the body to explore that. Because a lot of people, when they're suffering, it's a sense of separation in the most basic sense. But it's not just the mind that does that, it's the body that holds on to a lot of those feelings that create that sense of separation. So that's why it's so important to do the somatic work too. So there's a kind of a demonstration slash discussion of it, but it's, as you know, Bronte, the rubber meets the road when we're meeting with people one-on-one and we're taking through the process. That's where the real, clarity can come. I can only do so much by explaining it, but there it is, simple version of it. We have many inquiries, as you know. That's just one.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And it's helpful to come from you. And yeah, I agree. When you're one-on-one with someone, you can actually guide them through the process of being with what's in the body. That's where the magic happens. But I think having some kind of pointer to this coming to the body, which for me, that was the missing link. I did not even realize what was in the body. It was just, I just knew something was wrong. That was what was in my head. It was like, this is wrong. I need this to stop. And I didn't know how. And interestingly, when I started learning the Kiloby inquiries and I started coming to the body, and then I realized it was safe to allow those sensations to be there, then I started to understand the body's incredible intelligence to process its own emotions, and I didn't have to do anything. So for me, I'm getting to this point where I get excited when I'm triggered because it's like, oh, awesome. Okay, there's more to look at here. Yeah, I know, it's so good. It's so good. And it gets to be a powerful place to be in, because it's like, you're not frightened of anything. It's like, that's okay. You can come too. Great. Yeah, let's look at that. And so I guess I'm wondering, I actually don't know the time frame or the timeline. How long have you been practicing inquiry? Or I know it started as the living inquiries, and then you've more recently developed the Kiloby inquiries. And so, yeah, I'd love to know the timeline, like how long have you been practicing inquiry? And then I'd also like to know more about what your practice looks like. And that was actually one of the questions that one of my community members had. After you've done like initial big work, what does your practice look like now on a daily basis?
There's two questions there, if I remember right. The first one is how I came about it. And early on, before the first development of the inquiries as a method, if you will, was the living inquiries. And that didn't start until about 2009. That organization is still running the living inquiries, helping many people. The Kiloby inquiries started just about 4 years ago at our treatment centers, and now we've brought it online. But before the living inquiries, even going back to like 2005 and 2006, I was organically sort of inquiring on my own before I developed anything. And then those awakening experiences happened. And then as they did, the inquiries were developed partly for myself to deal with some post-awakening issues that were still left out there, but also I was meeting with people who were having difficulty just simply doing some of the practices that I was doing before my awakening. They were having difficulty. They were getting overwhelmed with thoughts. They were dealing with trauma. They were hung up on addictions. They were not able to sort of stabilize in presence. And so I developed the inquiries as a way to help those people sort of through the threshold of awakening and then the post-awakening process. And so it's really been a post-awakening deepening process that I'm doing experimenting in my own life and with others, and then sharing that with other people as more gets developed and seen as we go. Yeah.
And on a daily basis, what does your practice look like? Are you still sitting down for like a session working on a trigger, or are you still inquiring with facilitators, or are you finding that you need to inquire less and less after
Um,
all of these years?
less and less, less and less. If you notice on my website, kiloby.com, it says rest, inquire, enjoy life, right? So I take all three of those very seriously. So rest is needed, and was needed more in the past than it has now, because once you rest as awareness, as we say, you're resting as awareness, like noticing yourself, being aware. That recognition, once it comes online for you fully, you don't have to practice that anymore. It's simply awareness. Okay, so I don't practice that. I don't do short moments of awareness or meditation or anything, because the awareness is already there. That's there. Now, that's the rest part, resting as awareness. Inquire is an ongoing thing. To be open to look at, even as I'm resting as awareness, doesn't mean that there's not conditioning that I need to still look at, or stuck points, or something, an addiction here that pops up, or anything. It's much fewer and far between than ever before that I have to inquire, for sure. But it's there for me when I need it. And then the third one, enjoy life. That's what I do mostly. It's just enjoy life at this point. I'm just enjoying life. You know, I mean, even with chronic pain, it's crazy. I had chronic pain for 2 years, and at some level, despite those moments when it's been severe pain, I can say that I'm more content and happier than ever. It's strange, you know, to be experiencing that and still be content. You know, and I attribute that to this work and to some help from Western medicine, but mostly this work in terms of being able to manage this really difficult physical situation I'm going through, have gone through.
Mhm. Beautiful. Ah, well, thank you so much, Scott. It's, yeah, just been so brilliant speaking to you, and I've had so much love for the work that you've brought to the world, because it's completely changed my life. And but it's just really lovely to hear it from you, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to connect on a deeper level. So yeah, I just want to thank you for your for your journey, because it's brought such a gift to me, and now I get to share that gift with my community. So thank you for joining me.
No, it's my pleasure, and it's been a joy. So anytime.